putting together the show? Do you compile stories and then you pigeonhole them into a theme, or do you choose a theme first and then try to find stories to fit
The question is how do we make the show? Do we find the stories and then find the theme? Generally, it's something in between the two. Usually, what we'll have is we'll have one story that we know we want to do, and then we go looking for other stories. And then we have so many stories that we've been thinking about doing that didn't really have a home. Often, as soon as we have something that can be a magnet, we can attach other stuff to it. But a lot of weeks, truthfully, we go through so many ideas. For us to find 3 or 4 stories that we think are strong enough to be on the radio or on TV, we'll go through 15 or 20 different story ideas. Like this week's show, which we're really struggling with, the only stories that I'm actually sure of are, I'm writing a story about The Onion, where I went to the Onion editorial offices to watch them put together their newspaper. And I have never been in a work environment as close to my own work environment. They've been around almost exactly as long as we have. And on Monday morning, they come in, there are 8 writers, and each one of them has to bring in at least 15 headlines. And so that each of them has like, you guys know what The Onion is, right? Okay. And so they each have like 15 like funny headlines of fake news. And then there's 8 of them, and they go around the room, and each of them reads off their headlines. And if they can get 2 votes, then their headline lives. But they need 2 votes. And it's really harsh. And then there are things that get huge laughs in this Monday meeting that just never go in the paper. In fact, almost every single thing that got a big laugh, like my favorite headline that they had was, "Gay retard teased." Which is like, how could that not be funny? And they're like, no, it's too obvious. It's too obvious. Like, it's just so cheap. You've got gay, you've got retard. Like, that's the easiest laugh. It was like too cheap for them. And so that's not going to be in the paper. Although they all busted out laughing. There were so many like that too. And over the course of the morning, in addition to, like, they each have like 15 stories that they're doing, and then they have contributors who are pitching stuff to them. So that Monday, they have 700 stories, 700 headlines they look at, and they whittle it down to about 120. Tuesday morning, they come in and they go over the list of 120, and then they all say, well, I think this one could be the lead story, or this one should be the lead story, and then they argue about that, and from the 120, they narrow it down to the 16 that will be in the paper. So in 2 days, they go from 600 or 700 to 16. And our process is really very similar. We sort of look at it in all directions. This week we have this show called Tough Room. And so we had that story, but then I also talked to a friend who's a comedian, but then we decided not 2 comedy stories. And then we had this story that we were taping here in Chicago about the FBI coming to speak to Muslim students on the West Side at a school for Muslim students, where, you know, that's got to be a hard room to play because all the students are so suspicious of them. But that story didn't work out, and that got killed. And then we had another thing about this guy giving testimony in front of a Senate committee, but then we decided to kill that. And then up in the air is there's a Malcolm Gladwell thing that we all really love, but it isn't exactly on theme, but it's sort of like one of those things that, you know how at the last thing in the show you can kind of pretend it's on theme? Enough, we may use that. And then we have this thing about this guy who ran across Iran until the Iranian government stopped him. And he went as a sort of a gesture of peace and goodwill, and it's just sort of like, I'm going to be an American, I'm going to show our 2 countries can get along, I'm going to run across Iran, and I'm going to make a film of it called Iran. And he admitted partly he just wanted to do it just because he thought that title was so catchy. Iran. And so he gets to Iran with his Iranian friend, and suddenly I realized I don't know the correct pronunciation, if it's Iran or Iran or Iran. This is the problem with all these countries that we're at war with. There's no standard pronunciation. Like Vietnam, you could, no, actually I guess some people said Vietnam. I guess that's a sign that you're fighting with the wrong country. Like Germany, you can always pronounce it. So he gets to Iran, and they have the first rally, and the Iranian government is all for this, yes, thing of peace and friendship, and TV camera crews from the Arab media show up, and here's this American, and his American friend, and his Iranian friend, they're running across Iran, and thing of friendship, and some Iranian runners join them, and then and they show up at the first rally, and you know, the TV cameras, and they say, and the TV cameras, all they want to know is like, well, what do you think of us having nuclear energy here in Iran? And they go, well, we don't really know about that. You know, we're just here to run. And they go, but don't you think that a sovereign country should be able to develop its own nuclear power? And it's just like, well, you know, we're really just here for friendship. One thing after another. Finally, the guy goes, yeah, you sure, nuclear power, as long as it's not for bombs. And then so the next day, there's a rally, and now everyone is wearing banners that say like, you know, for peaceful use of nuclear energy, and they're supposed to put on the banners too, and they don't know what to. And basically, the whole thing devolves from there. At some point, they stop. They say they're not going to do it. They're not going to participate in this pro-nuclear energy thing they're being asked to do, and then they get kicked out of the country. And so I don't know. I don't know if that's going to make it in either. I don't know what's going to be on the radio this week. And then the story I'm writing is at 12 minutes or 16 minutes. Anyway, I think in general, like if you're doing some creative work, one of the things that people don't tell you is just finding an idea that's worth making work about. It tends to take up half your time. And I remember when I was in my 20s and I wanted to do some sort of creative work, I wish somebody had said this to me, because, you know, like if you're making songs, if you're making movies, if you're making radio, or you're trying to write, you look around at all your peers, or people a little older, and it just seems like, God, they've got so many ideas. Like, why do they have so many ideas, but I don't have any ideas? And I think it's really easy to feel really cowed by that. And nobody ever tells you that if you want to make creative work, it's typical for you to spend half your time just figuring out what's the work going to be about, and that you have to view finding the subject of the work as a job. Like that's part of your job as somebody who wants to make stuff. That you have to like go out and like, where do ideas come from? You have to kind of surround yourself with ideas. You know, you have to like read a lot and look at a lot of stuff and look around at stuff and just like wait for something to just hit you in your heart. So you just think, oh, that gives me something I can do. So I feel like this has been a very, very digressive answer.
Wonderful.
Thank you.